They called me the failure. My parents gave my college fund to my brother, so I used my secret scholarship to buy their dream house. My name is Jessica. I am 29 years old, and I live in a small town outside of Portland, Oregon. This is the story of how my family's golden boy favoritism and cruel dismissal of my dreams led me to buy the very house they'd coveted for decades, with money they never knew I had. Growing up in the Mitchell household meant living with an unspoken hierarchy. My older brother Jake was the crown prince, star quarterback, honor roll student, and everything my parents had ever dreamed of in a child. I was just Jessica, the artsy one, the dreamer, the one who spent too much time with her, nose in books about psychology and not enough time focusing on practical career paths. My parents, Linda and Robert Mitchell, owned a modest but successful accounting firm in town. Dad had built it from nothing after college, and Mom had joined him as a partner after getting her CPA. They were practical people who believed in hard work, traditional success, and most importantly, that their business would someday be Jake's legacy. From the time I was 12, every family dinner conversation revolved around Jake's achievements. Jake scored 3 touchdowns at Friday's game. Jake got accepted to Oregon State with a partial football scholarship. Jake's business classes are really preparing him to take over the firm someday. And me? Jessica's still drawing in her sketchbooks. Maybe she'll grow out of it. The thing is, I wasn't just drawing. I was studying human behavior, reading psychology journals, and becoming fascinated with how people made decisions. I had this wild idea that I could somehow combine art, psychology, and technology to help people. But whenever I tried to share my ideas, I'd get polite nods and quick subject changes back to Jake's latest accomplishment. The family dynamic became crystal clear during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to Stanford with a partial academic scholarship to study psychology and computer science. I was beyond excited. This was my chance to prove that the dreamy daughter had substance too. But when I announced it at dinner, the response was lukewarm at best. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, barely looking up from her plate. "But Stanford is so expensive, even with a partial scholarship. We've been saving for you kids' college funds, but Jake's football scholarship only covers part of his expenses." "Too." Dad nodded. "We need to be practical here. Jake's studying business administration, which directly applies to taking over our firm. Your psychology degree? Well, what would you even do with that?" I felt my heart sink, but I pressed on. I want to develop technology that helps people make better decisions. Maybe apps or websites that... "Apps?" Jake interrupted with a laugh. "Jessica, you can barely figure out how to update your phone. You're going to develop apps?" The whole table erupted in gentle laughter. Not mean-spirited, they probably thought, just realistic. "Look, sweetheart," Dad continued. "Why don't you go to Portland State instead? It's much more affordable, and you can study something practical like education or nursing. Leave the big dreams to people who understand business." That night, I cried myself to sleep. But I also made a decision that would change everything. What my family didn't know was that I had applied for dozens of scholarships throughout my senior year. Not just academic ones, but creative ones, technology ones, scholarships for women in STEAM fields, scholarships for first-generation college students. Even though technically I wouldn't be first-generation, my parents' education was so different from what I wanted to pursue. 3 weeks after that devastating dinner conversation, I received a call that changed my life. The Davidson Innovation Fellowship, a full-ride scholarship plus living expenses, plus a $10,000 annual stipend for promising students who wanted to bridge technology and human behavior. I had won it. I was one of 15 students selected nationwide. Should have been ecstatic. Instead, I sat in my car in the school parking lot after getting the call, wondering if I should even tell my parents. The scholarship letter was clear. The fellowship was mine. No strings attached. as long as I maintained my grades and participated in the program's mentorship opportunities. That night at dinner, I decided to share the good news. Mom, Dad, I got some incredible news today. I won the Davidson Innovation Fellowship. It's a full ride to Stanford, plus living expenses, plus... That's wonderful, honey, Mom interrupted. So now we can put your college fund toward Jake's expenses. He's been worried about making ends meet, even with his football money. I blinked. What? Dad was already nodding enthusiastically. This works out perfectly. Jake, this means we can get you that new laptop for your business classes, and maybe even help you with a car down payment. Wait, I said, my voice getting smaller. That's not... I mean, the college fund was supposed to be for my education too, right? Well, yes, but you don't need it now, Mom said brightly. This is actually better for everyone. Your scholarship covers everything, and Jake still needs our help. It's the practical thing to do. Jake grinned. Thanks, sis. I promise I'll pay you back someday when I'm running the family business. I wanted to scream. I wanted to point out that I had worked incredibly hard for this scholarship, that it wasn't just luck, that maybe their college fund investment in my education could have been, I don't know, a celebration, a sign of support. Instead, I just nodded and excused myself from the table. That night, I made another decision that would prove crucial later. I didn't tell them about the $10,000 annual stipend, or about the networking opportunities, or about the fact that Davidson Fellowship recipients often received additional grants and opportunities throughout college. I opened a separate bank account and decided that some information was better, kept private. Stanford was everything I had dreamed of and more. The psychology program was rigorous. The computer science courses challenged me in ways I'd never experienced, and the Davidson Fellowship community became my real family. These were students who understood what it meant to think differently, to see connections others missed, to believe that technology could genuinely improve human lives. My fellowship mentor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, was a former Google executive who had left to start her own research institute focused on decision-making, psychology. She saw potential in my ideas about combining behavioral science with user experience design. Jessica, she told me during our first meeting, you have an intuitive understanding of how people process information. That's rare. Don't let anyone convince you it's not valuable. Meanwhile, back home, family dinners during breaks became increasingly uncomfortable. Jake was thriving at Oregon State, and every conversation centered around his internships, his networking, his bright future taking over Mitchell & Associates. Jake landed an internship with the biggest accounting firm in Portland, Dad announced, during Thanksgiving of my sophomore year. They're already talking about fast-tracking him to partner level. That's amazing, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. How are your classes going, Jessica? Mom asked, but I could tell it was more politeness than genuine interest. Really well. I'm working on a research project about decision-making patterns in consumer behavior, and Dr. Rodriguez thinks it might be publishable. That's nice, dear, Mom interrupted. Jake, tell us more about your internship supervisor. Is he someone who might want to do business with our firm? I stopped trying to share my achievements after that. Instead, I focused on building something they couldn't ignore. During my junior year, I became obsessed with a problem I'd noticed in my behavioral psychology research. People consistently made poor financial decisions, not because they didn't understand math, but because financial apps and websites were designed by engineers who didn't understand human psychology. Every budgeting app, every investment platform, every financial planning tool was built with the assumption that people would behave rationally. But my research showed that people needed emotional and psychological support to make good financial decisions. They needed apps that understood their fears, their cognitive biases, their behavioral patterns. I spent months developing a prototype for what I called Mindful Money, a financial planning app that used behavioral psychology principles to help people make better decisions. Instead of just showing charts and numbers, it provided emotional support, recognized decision-making patterns, and adapted to each user's psychological profile. Dr. Rodriguez was fascinated. Jessica, this could genuinely help people. The financial wellness industry is enormous, but no one's approaching it from this angle. I applied for additional grants through the Davidson Fellowship Program and received $15,000 to develop a working prototype. Combined with my annual stipends, which I'd been carefully saving, I had enough money to hire a part-time developer and a UX designer. During Christmas break of my junior year, I was bursting with excitement about my progress. Surely now my parents would be interested in what I was building. "Mom, Dad, I want to show you something I've been working on," I said after dinner. I pulled out my laptop and opened my prototype. It's called Mindful Money, and it's a financial planning app that uses psychology to help people make better decisions with their money. I walked them through the features: the mood-based budgeting, the cognitive bias recognition, the behavioral pattern analysis. I showed them early user feedback from beta testing on campus. I explained how it could revolutionize personal finance. Dad looked politely confused. "So, it's like Quicken?" "No, it's completely different. It focuses on the psychological barriers that prevent people from making good financial decisions." Mom said. "That's interesting. How much money do you think something like this could make?" Finally, a business question I could answer. Well, the financial app market is worth billions, and there's essentially no competition in the psychology-based space. My research suggests— "Jessica," Jake interrupted. "No offense, but this seems pretty niche. I mean, people who need help with money probably can't afford to pay for fancy apps. Have you thought about getting a real internship instead? I could probably get you something entry-level at my firm." The room went quiet. I looked around at my family's faces and saw polite skepticism. Not cruelty exactly, but complete lack of faith in my abilities. "Thanks," I said quietly, closing my laptop. "I'll think about it." But I didn't think about it. Instead, I doubled down. My senior year was a whirlwind of activity. Mindful Money was gaining traction on campus, and Dr. Rodriguez had introduced me to several potential investors in Silicon Valley. I was juggling a full course load, running beta tests, refining the app, and preparing for my senior thesis presentation. The whole app was working, really working. Users were reporting significant improvements in their financial habits, decreased money-related anxiety, and better long-term planning. The psychology-first approach was resonating in ways that traditional financial apps never had. In March, I received an email that made me literally fall out of my chair. Google wanted to meet with me. Not for a job interview. They wanted to discuss acquiring Mindful Money. The meeting was surreal. 5 Google executives, 2 venture capitalists that Dr. Rodriguez had connected me with, and me, sitting in a conference room overlooking San Francisco Bay, discussing the future of financial wellness technology. Jessica, the lead executive, said, "What you've built addresses a genuine gap in the market. Our research shows that psychological barriers are the primary reason people fail to achieve financial wellness, but no one's built a scalable solution to address that, until now." The numbers they threw around were staggering. They wanted to acquire Mindful Money for $2.3 million plus a signing bonus, plus a guaranteed position on their financial products team. I was 21 years old, and I was being offered more money than my parents had made in the last 5 years combined. I asked for a week to consider the offer. That night, I called home, bursting with excitement and nerves. "Mom, I have some incredible news." "Oh, good, honey. Is it about graduation? Have you figured out what you're going to do after college?" "Jake's already been offered a full-time position at his internship firm, and they're talking about him potentially joining our business as a junior partner in a few years." My excitement deflated slightly. "No, it's about my app. Mom, Google wants to buy Mindful Money. They've offered me over $2 million. Silence. Then, Jessica, honey, that's not funny. I'm not joking. I'm serious. Google executives met with me yesterday, and they want to acquire my app. Sweetie, Dad's voice came on the line. They'd put me on speaker. We love that you're passionate about your projects, but you don't need to exaggerate to get our attention. I'm not exaggerating. I can send you the offer letter. Jessica. Jake's voice joined the conversation. Come on. Google doesn't just buy apps from college students. Maybe they expressed some interest, or maybe you misunderstood what they were saying, but I hung up. I sat in my dorm room, staring at the offer letter from Google, and felt something shift inside me. For years, I had been seeking their approval, their recognition, their belief in my abilities. But in that moment, I realized something crucial. I didn't need it anymore. I called Dr. Rodriguez instead. Jessica, I've been waiting to hear from you. What did you decide about the Google offer? I'm going to turn it down. What? Jessica, that's a life-changing amount of money. I know. But I think mindful money can be bigger than what Google would do with it. They'd probably integrate it into their existing products and lose what makes it special. I want to build this into something that can really change how people think about money. Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. You know, there are other ways to raise capital. Angel investors, venture capital firms. You could maintain control while getting the funding you need to scale. Tell me more. Over the next 6 months, I learned more about business than I had in 4 years of college. Dr. Rodriguez introduced me to her network of angel investors and venture capitalists who specialized in consumer psychology and financial technology. I refined my pitch, improved my prototype, and expanded my user base. By the time I graduated from Stanford, Mindful Money had 50,000 active users and was growing by 15% every month. But more importantly, I had raised $5 million in Series A funding. The investor meetings were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. These were people who understood both technology and psychology, who saw the potential for disrupting an entire industry. They asked tough questions, challenged my assumptions, and ultimately believed in the vision I'd been trying to share with my family for years. Jessica, one of my lead investors told me, you've identified a genuine market inefficiency. The financial wellness industry has been stuck in the same paradigm for decades. What you're building could genuinely improve millions of people's lives while generating substantial returns. I moved to San Francisco after graduation and threw myself into building the company. I hired a team of developers, UX designers, behavioral psychologists, and financial experts. We refined the app, expanded our features, and began planning for a broader launch. Meanwhile, back home, family dinners continued as they always had. Jake's doing so well at the firm, Mom gushed during one of our monthly phone calls. He's bringing in new clients, and Dad's talking about making him a full partner next year. That's great, I said. How's the business doing overall? Oh, it's been challenging lately. The economy's been tough, and a lot of small businesses are struggling. Dad's worried about some of our long-term clients. I perked up. This was the first time I'd heard any concern about Mitchell & Associates' financial stability. What kind of challenges? Well, there are all these new online accounting services that charge much less than we do. Some of our clients have been asking about switching to those automated systems. Dad thinks it's just a phase, but Jake's been suggesting we might need to modernize our approach. Interesting. I filed that information away and kept building. 18 months after graduation, everything changed overnight. A prominent financial wellness blogger with 2 million followers discovered Mindful Money and wrote a glowing review. Within 24 hours, we had 100,000 new signups. Within a week, we were featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Revolutionary app combines psychology and finance to actually help people change their money habits, the Forbes headline read. Finally, a financial tool that understands human nature. The attention was overwhelming and exhilarating. Investors, who had previously ignored my emails were suddenly calling. Competitors were trying to poach my employees. Media outlets wanted interviews. But the best part was the user feedback. Thousands of people writing to tell me how mindful money was changing their lives, helping them get out of debt, teaching them to save, reducing their financial anxiety. One message particularly stuck with me. I've tried every budgeting app and financial planning tool available. They all made me feel stupid for not being able to stick to their systems. Mindful Money is the first one that actually understands why I make the financial decisions I do, and helps me make better ones. Thank you for building something that treats people like humans instead of calculators. That's when I knew we had something special. By the end of year 2, Mindful Money had 2 million active users and was generating $50 million in annual revenue. We raised a $25 million Series B round at a $200 million valuation. I was 24 years old, and I was worth more money than I had ever imagined possible. During this entire time, I had kept my family mostly in the dark about Mindful Money's success. I would mention that my little app was doing well, but I never shared specific numbers or media coverage. Part of me was still protecting myself from their skepticism, and part of me was planning. Because I had started paying attention to Mitchell and Associates' situation. Through casual conversations with my parents, I learned that their accounting firm was struggling more than they'd initially let on. The rise of automated accounting software and online tax preparation services was eating into their client base. Their revenue had dropped by 30% over the past 2 years. Jake was trying to modernize their approach, but he was fighting against Dad's resistance to change and their limited budget for technology upgrades. Several of their long-term clients had already switched to cheaper alternatives. During a Christmas visit home, I got the full picture. Dad's being stubborn, Jake confided in me privately. He keeps saying this is just a rough patch that clients will come back when they realize automated software can't replace human expertise. But I've run the numbers, Jessica. We're going to lose half our remaining clients in the next year if we don't do something drastic. What kind of drastic? We need to completely rebuild our technology infrastructure, develop our own online platform, maybe even rebrand the company. But that would cost at least $500,000, and we don't have that kind of cash flow. What about a business loan? Jake shook his head. We've already leveraged everything we can. The house, the office building, Dad's retirement account. Any bank would take one look at our declining revenue and run. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom and stared at the ceiling, thinking about irony. My family's business was failing because they couldn't adapt to technology-driven changes in their industry. Meanwhile, I had built a technology company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they still had no idea. In March of my 3rd year running Mindful Money, I received a call from my real estate agent in San Francisco. Jessica, I know you've been looking for investment properties, and something just came on the market that I think you'd find interesting. It's not in the Bay Area, though. It's in Oregon. Oregon? A beautiful Victorian house in a small town outside Portland. 1890s, fully restored, 4,000 square feet, sitting on 2 acres with mountain views. The asking price is $850,000. My heart stopped. What's the address? She rattled off an address that I knew by heart. It was the Morrison House, the most beautiful property in our small town, sitting on the hill overlooking downtown. My parents had driven past it countless times throughout my childhood, always commenting on how it was their dream house. If we ever won the lottery, Mom used to say, that's where we'd live. The owners are motivated sellers, my real estate agent continued. They've already moved to Florida and want to close quickly. Cash offers will get priority. I didn't hesitate. I want it. Full asking price. Cash. Fastest closing possible. Jessica, don't you want to see it first? I grew up in that town. I know the house. Draw up the papers. 2 weeks later, I owned the Morrison House. I spent the next month quietly preparing. I hired a local contractor to do some light updates. Nothing major, just enough to make the house absolutely perfect. I had it professionally staged with beautiful furniture that matched the Victorian aesthetic. I installed state-of-the-art security and technology systems while keeping them discreetly hidden. Most importantly, I had my lawyer prepare all the documentation that would prove, beyond any doubt, exactly how I had acquired the money to buy this house. Then I planned the perfect family dinner. "Mom," I called one Tuesday in April. "I'm coming home for the weekend, and I'd love to cook dinner for everyone. Just family, you, Dad, Jake, and me." "That sounds wonderful, honey. It's been too long since we've all been together. Jake's been so stressed about the business lately, and your father's been working 7-day weeks trying to keep up with everything. Actually, I was hoping we could have dinner somewhere special. You know the Morrison house up on the hill?" "Of course. Your dream house," she laughed. "Are you planning to sit in their driveway and pretend?" "Something like that. Just trust me, okay?" Saturday evening, I picked up my family in a rented Tesla. I still drove a modest Honda Civic when I visited home, keeping up appearances. "Jessica, where are we going exactly?" Dad asked as I turned up the winding road toward the Morrison house. "You'll see." When I pulled into the circular driveway of the Morrison house, my family was confused. "Honey, I don't think we should be here," Mom said nervously. "This is private property." I parked the car and turned to face them. "Actually, it's my private property." The silence in the car was deafening. "What do you mean?" Jake asked slowly. Held up a set of keys. "I mean, I bought this house. It's mine." I got out of the car and walked to the front door, leaving my family sitting in stunned silence. After a moment, they followed. The house was everything I remembered and more. The contractor had done beautiful work restoring the original hardwood floors and crown molding. The dining room was set for 4, with candles, fresh flowers, and a home-cooked meal I'd had catered from their favorite restaurant in town. My family stood in the foyer, mouths literally hanging open. "Jessica," Mom whispered, How is this possible?" "Sit down," I said gently. "Let me tell you a story." Over dinner, I told them everything. About Mindful Money's success, about the millions of users, about the revenue and valuations and media coverage. I showed them articles from Forbes and TechCrunch. I showed them my company's website, our user testimonials, our investor announcements. This app that I built, the one you thought was a silly college project, is now worth over $200 million. Last month, we signed a partnership deal with 3 major banks. Next month, we're launching in Europe. Dad stared at his phone, scrolling through. Article after article about Mindful Money and its founder, me. "I don't understand," he said finally. "Why didn't you tell us?" I took a deep breath. Because every time I tried to share my dreams with this family, I was told they weren't practical. Every time I accomplished something, the conversation somehow turned back to Jake's achievements. "You gave my college fund to Jake because you assumed my success didn't matter as much as his." Jake looked stricken. "Jessica, I had no idea you felt that way." "I know you didn't. That's the problem." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. "Do you want to know what's really ironic? Mitchell & Associates is struggling because you can't compete with technology companies that understand human behavior and user experience. Meanwhile, I've built a technology company specifically focused on understanding human behavior." I slid a document across the table. "This is a proposal I've had my team prepare. Mindful Money wants to acquire Mitchell & Associates." The silence was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. "What?" Mom whispered. "Your accounting firm has exactly the kind of human expertise that my users are asking for. They want technology that makes financial planning easier. But they also want access to real human advisors who understand their local community. You have 40 years of client relationships and local knowledge. I have the technology platform and user base." I opened the proposal. "I'm offering to buy Mitchell & Associates for $800,000, which is more than it's worth on paper, but I'm accounting for the client relationships and local reputation. Dad and Jake would both have guaranteed positions in the new company. You'd keep serving your existing clients, but you'd also become the local advisory team for mindful money users in the Pacific Northwest region. Dad was staring at the numbers, his hands shaking slightly. This would solve all your financial problems, I continued. You'd have the technology infrastructure you need, a steady salary, and job security. Plus, Jake would be learning from a company that's actually thriving in the new economy. Jake looked up at me. Jessica, this is incredibly generous. But why would you want to help us after how we've treated you? I considered the question carefully. Because despite everything, you're my family. And because I genuinely think this could work. Mitchell & Associates has something valuable. You just need the right technology platform to deliver it. The next few hours were a blur of emotions. Mom cried, from relief, from guilt, from gratitude. Dad kept apologizing for not believing in me, for not seeing what I was building. Jake was quiet for a long time, processing the reality that his dreamer sister had not only succeeded beyond anything he'd achieved, but was now offering to save his career. I need to ask you something, Dad said finally. How did you afford this house? I mean, I know your company is successful, but this is almost $1 million in cash. I smiled. Do you remember the Davidson Fellowship I won in high school? The one that paid for Stanford? Of course. It didn't just pay for college. It came with a $10,000 annual stipend, plus access to additional grants and funding opportunities throughout school. I never spent that money. I invested it and then used it to bootstrap mindful money. Every dollar you saved by giving my college fund to Jake, I had already replaced through my own work. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. So this house, Mom said slowly, was bought with money I earned by building something you all thought was impossible. We stayed up until 3 a.m. that night, talking through everything. The years of misunderstandings, the missed opportunities to really see each other, the assumptions we'd all made. Jake was the most shaken by the revelation. Jessica, I've spent my whole life thinking I was the successful one, the one carrying the family legacy. And meanwhile, you were building something incredible, and I was too arrogant to see it. You weren't arrogant, I said. You were just focused on the path that made sense to you. But there are lots of different ways to be successful. The acquisition of Mitchell & Associates went through in August. Dad and Jake both joined Mindful Money as regional advisors, and they've been incredible assets to the company. Turns out, when you combine Dad's decades of experience with human financial behavior with our technology platform, you get something really powerful. Jake has become one of our most effective team members. He understands both traditional financial planning and the new technology-driven approach, which makes him perfect for helping other small accounting firms integrate with our platform. Mom has become my biggest cheerleader, sending me every article she finds about Mindful Money, and proudly telling everyone in town about her daughter's company. The Morrison house has become my weekend retreat. I kept the San Francisco apartment for work, but I spend most weekends in Oregon, often hosting family dinners in the dining room where I revealed everything. Last month, Mindful Money was valued at $500 million in our Series C funding round. We now have 8 million users across 12 countries, and we're genuinely changing how people think about money and financial wellness. But the best part isn't the money or the recognition. It's the Sunday dinners where my family asks about my work with genuine curiosity and pride. It's watching Jake discover that he actually loves combining technology with financial planning. It's seeing Dad realize that embracing change doesn't mean abandoning everything he's built over decades. The revenge fantasy I had imagined during those difficult years, showing up with wealth and success to prove everyone wrong, turned out to be less satisfying than I'd expected. The real victory was something different. Building something meaningful, staying true to my vision even when no one believed in it, and ultimately finding a way to bring my family along with me. I still think about that dinner conversation when I was 17, when Dad asked what I would even do with a psychology degree. Now I can answer that question. I use it to build technology that helps millions of people make better financial decisions, to create a company that employs hundreds of people, and to prove that understanding human behavior is one of the most practical skills you can have in the modern economy. The Morrison House isn't just a symbol of my success. It's where I learned that the best revenge is building something so undeniably valuable that skepticism turns into respect, and ultimately, into partnership. And that, everyone, is my story. It was a wild ride, but I wouldn't change how it ended. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? I'm really curious to know, so tell me down in the comments below. Have you ever experienced anything remotely similar, or had a moment where you just knew you had to take a stand? I'd love to read your experiences if you're comfortable sharing. If you found this story satisfying and you're hungry for more, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a big thumbs up, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss out on the next one. Thanks for listening.